No one wakes up one morning suddenly strong. No one magically becomes resilient the moment life collapses. Strength is never born in chaos. It is revealed there. The truth most people don't want to hear is this: the world will test you. Not if, when. And when that moment comes, it will not ask whether you feel ready. It will not wait until you feel confident. It will arrive unannounced, uninvited, and uncompromising. And in that moment, you will not rise to your hopes. You will fall to your preparation. This is why some people break under pressure while others bend and stand back up. It's why two people can face the same storm, the same loss, the same failure, and walk away completely different. One collapses. The other becomes stronger. The difference is not talent. It's not luck. It's not intelligence. The difference is whether the mind was trained before it was tested. We live in a world that teaches comfort, not readiness. We are taught to avoid discomfort, silence pain, escape struggle, and chase ease. But comfort has never built courage. Ease has never created endurance. And avoidance has never prepared anyone for impact. The mind, like the body, weakens when it is never challenged. Every day you are either training your mind or neglecting it. Every excuse you accept, every uncomfortable task you avoid, every hard conversation you postpone is shaping who you will become when life pushes back. And life will push back. It always does. This is not a speech about being fearless. Fear will always exist. This is about building the kind of mind that moves forward anyway. A mind that does not collapse when motivation disappears. A mind that does not surrender when circumstances turn unfair. A mind that knows how to stand when everything else feels unstable. If you wait for hardship to prepare you, it will already be too late. You don't build strength during the storm. You build it on calm days, in quiet moments, when no one is watching, when quitting would be easy and discipline would be inconvenient. Stay with this message until the end, because what you are about to hear is not motivation, it is preparation. It is a reminder that mental toughness is not something you are born with, but something you build deliberately, daily, long before the world decides to test you. And when that test comes, and it will, the question won't be, why is this happening to me? The question will be, did I build the mind strong enough to carry me through it? Most people believe toughness is something that appears in moments of chaos. They imagine strength showing up when life falls apart, when the pressure is unbearable, when the crisis hits without warning. But that belief is comforting, and comfort often hides the truth. Toughness does not arrive during the storm. It is not created in the heat of collapse. It is revealed there. What actually happens in a crisis is simple. The mind defaults to the habits it practiced when life was quiet. Silence is where toughness is formed. Not the silence of isolation, but the silence of discipline. The moments when no one is clapping, no one is watching, and no one is praising the effort. The moments when you wake up early even though no one asked you to. When you choose restraint even though no one would notice if you gave in. When you sit with discomfort instead of distracting yourself from it. Those quiet choices do not feel heroic, but they are the bricks that build a resilient mind. In crisis, there is no time to negotiate with yourself. There is no space to debate values or suddenly discover discipline. When pressure rises, the mind does not search for inspiration. It reaches for familiarity. It goes back to what it knows. If it knows avoidance, it avoids. If it knows excuses, it explains. If it knows endurance, it endures. That is why silence matters so much, because silence is where patterns are formed before they are needed. We admire people who remain calm under pressure, who make clear decisions when everything feels unstable. We call them strong, composed, unbreakable. But what we do not see is the long period of quiet training that came before that moment. We do not see the nights they chose consistency over comfort. We do not see the internal battles they won when quitting would have been easier and completely invisible to the world. The mind is not strengthened by noise. Noise distracts, entertains, and numbs. Silence confronts. It forces you to face your thoughts without filters, to acknowledge fear without running from it, to recognize weakness without denial. In silence, you learn how you talk to yourself when no one else is listening. And that inner dialogue becomes the voice you hear when life turns loud and overwhelming. Many people wait for crisis to change them. They promise themselves that when things get hard, they will step up, focus, and become disciplined. But crisis does not create new versions of us. It exposes the version we have been rehearsing all along. If the quiet days were filled with procrastination, self-doubt, and avoidance, the crisis will magnify those habits. If the quiet days were filled with responsibility, self-control, and honesty, the crisis will reveal strength. Toughness is not about suppressing emotion or pretending not to feel pain. It is about learning how to sit with discomfort without being controlled by it. That skill cannot be learned when everything is falling apart. It is learned in silence, when discomfort is small, manageable, and easy to ignore. Choosing to stay present in those moments is how the mind learns resilience. Silence also teaches patience, and patience is a core ingredient of mental toughness. In a loud world that rewards speed and instant reaction, patience feels unnatural. But strong minds are not rushed. They understand timing. They understand that not every impulse deserves action and not every emotion deserves expression. That understanding is developed slowly through repeated moments of pause, reflection, and restraint. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you have done the work when no one was watching. It is not arrogance. It is not ego. It is trust in yourself. That trust becomes a stabilizing force when circumstances become unstable. When others panic, you remember that you have already faced yourself in silence and survived. Crisis often strips away external support. Titles lose meaning, applause disappears, opinions become irrelevant. What remains is your internal structure. And if that structure was never built, the collapse feels sudden and overwhelming. But if it was built slowly, quietly, consistently, the crisis becomes a test, not a threat. Every day offers opportunities to build toughness without drama. Finishing what you start even when motivation fades, telling the truth when silence would be easier, choosing effort over excuses, sitting with uncertainty instead of demanding immediate answers. These moments rarely feel important at the time, but they compound. They teach the mind that discomfort is not dangerous and that difficulty is survivable. Silence is also where identity is shaped. Not the identity you present to others, but the one you live with. The private standard you hold yourself to when no one else is measuring. That private identity becomes the foundation of toughness. Because when life challenges you, you do not ask who you should become. You act as who already decided you are. The world will eventually apply pressure. It always does. And when it does, it will not care about your intentions or your plans. It will respond only to your preparation. Toughness then is not an emergency response. It is a lifestyle built quietly, deliberately, and patiently long before it is required. This is why silence matters more than crisis. Because crisis only reveals what silence has already built. Comfort feels safe. It feels earned. It feels like something we deserve after effort, after struggle, after long days of trying to hold everything together. And because it feels harmless, we rarely question it. But comfort has a quiet cost. It does not attack the mind loudly or violently. It weakens it slowly, subtly, and with permission. The greatest threat to mental strength is not hardship. Hardship demands adaptation. Hardship forces growth. Hardship asks something of us. Comfort asks nothing. And when nothing is required of the mind, it begins to lose its edge. Just like a muscle that is no longer used, the mind softens when it is never challenged. Comfort teaches us to avoid friction. It convinces us that inconvenience is a problem rather than a signal. That discomfort means something is wrong instead of something is working. Over time, we begin to confuse ease with progress. We mistake feeling good for moving forward. And without realizing it, we trade resilience for relief. A comfortable mind becomes reactive. It resists disruption. It looks for shortcuts instead of solutions. When things go wrong, it is not prepared to respond with clarity or courage. It looks for someone else to blame, something else to fix, or some way to escape the pressure. Comfort trains the mind to expect smooth paths, and when the path becomes uneven, it panics. Mental strength is not built by removing difficulty. It is built by learning how to function within it. But comfort removes those opportunities. It smooths the edges of experience. It shields us from small stresses that would have taught us how to handle larger ones. And when the larger ones arrive, they feel unbearable because the mind has not been trained to carry weight. The danger of comfort is not that it feels good. The danger is that it feels normal. Once comfort becomes the default, effort begins to feel like a threat. Discipline feels unnecessary. Growth feels optional. And when growth is optional, stagnation becomes inevitable. Comfort also reshapes how we speak to ourselves. We begin to negotiate with our standards. We tell ourselves that we will try tomorrow, that this moment does not really matter, that skipping this effort will not change anything. But every small compromise teaches the mind that quitting is acceptable, that resistance is optional, that discipline is conditional. Over time, these quiet negotiations become habits. A strong mind does not avoid comfort entirely, but it never lives there permanently. It understands that comfort is a place to visit, not a place to build a life. Because the longer we stay comfortable, the more fragile we become. The more fragile we become, the more we depend on conditions being perfect. And perfect conditions never last. Comfort makes us impatient with struggle. It reduces our tolerance for uncertainty. It shortens our attention span and weakens our focus. When progress requires time, discomfort, or repetition, a comfortable mind loses interest. It wants results without resistance. But strength has never been built that way. The irony is that the very thing we seek through comfort, peace, stability, confidence, is produced by its opposite. True confidence comes from knowing you can handle discomfort. Real peace comes from resilience, not avoidance. Stability comes from adaptability, not ease. Comfort promises these things, but it cannot deliver them. Mental strength grows when we choose effort even when comfort is available. When we speak up instead of staying silent to keep things easy. When we do the hard thing even though no one would judge us for avoiding it. When we stay engaged instead of numbing ourselves with distraction. These choices are rarely dramatic, but they are decisive. A comfortable life often looks successful on the surface. It is organized, predictable, and controlled. But control is not strength. Control is fragile. It depends on everything staying the same. Strength, on the other hand, is flexible. It does not need conditions to cooperate. It adapts when they do not. When comfort becomes the priority, fear grows quietly in the background. Fear of change, fear of failure, fear of discomfort itself. The mind begins to protect the current state rather than pursue growth. And protection, while necessary at times, cannot be the foundation of a strong mind. Mental strength is built by choosing challenge before it is forced upon you. By leaning into difficulty when escape is available, by voluntarily doing what is hard so that when the hard becomes unavoidable, the mind recognizes the terrain, it knows how to breathe, it knows how to focus, it knows how to continue. Comfort delays this learning, it postpones readiness. It convinces us that we will prepare later when we have to. But preparation done under pressure is survival, not strength. Strength is developed in advance through repeated exposure to effort and discomfort when the stakes are low. The world does not break strong minds easily, it breaks untrained ones. And nothing leaves the mind more untrained than a life built entirely around comfort. Motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes like the tide, unpredictable and unreliable. One day you feel inspired, full of energy, ready to conquer every challenge. The next day, that same energy has vanished, replaced by fatigue, doubt, or distraction. If we rely solely on motivation to drive our actions, we will be inconsistent. We will start projects and abandon them, chase dreams and let them fade, seek growth and settle for stagnation. This is why discipline is far more important than motivation. Discipline does not wait for feeling. Discipline does not require inspiration. Discipline shows up even when you do not feel like it, and in that way, it trains the mind to endure, to persist, and to achieve long after motivation disappears. Discipline is the bridge between intention and action. Everyone has intentions, everyone has goals, everyone dreams of being stronger, wiser, more capable. But intentions are worthless without action. Motivation may get you started, but it cannot sustain you. Discipline does. It creates consistency. It teaches the mind that effort is not conditional on emotion. The mind learns that action is a habit, not a whim. That lesson cannot be underestimated because life rarely waits for us to feel ready. Life presents challenges without notice, without permission, and without regard for our emotional state. Consider the times you have tried to rely on motivation alone. You wake up determined to exercise, to study, to improve, or to focus, and for a few days the fire burns bright. But as soon as the initial spark fades, as soon as obstacles appear or fatigue sets in, the effort falters. That is the nature of motivation. It is temporary, inconsistent, and fragile. Discipline, however, is structural. It is built on repetition, habit, and commitment, which become more reliable than feelings ever could. A disciplined mind acts because it has trained itself to act. Discipline creates resilience. When you train your mind to take action regardless of how you feel, you learn that discomfort is tolerable. You learn that effort is not always rewarding in the moment, but it compounds over time. You learn to separate action from emotion. This is critical because life rarely provides instant gratification for hard work. Most of the outcomes we desire, success, mastery, growth, fulfillment, require sustained effort over months and years. Motivation is inadequate for that time scale. Discipline, on the other hand, can carry you through the long stretches when enthusiasm has faded, when the initial excitement has worn off, and when no one is watching or cheering. When motivation is present, discipline is easy to practice. But the true test of discipline comes when motivation is gone. It comes on days when you feel tired, uninspired, or defeated. It comes when your mind is telling you to quit, to delay, to compromise. This is when discipline reveals its power. Discipline tells you to show up anyway. Discipline tells you to take one more step, to write one more page, to complete one more task, even when you would rather do anything else. It trains the mind to tolerate discomfort, to resist the urge for shortcuts, and to stay committed to long-term objectives. The mind is like a muscle. Motivation is like adrenaline. It can produce bursts of energy, but it cannot build the muscle itself. Discipline is the weight, the resistance, the repetitive action that strengthens the mind over time. Each small act of discipline reinforces neural pathways that make persistence easier. Each moment you choose action over inaction, even when it is inconvenient, teaches your mind that it is capable of enduring difficulty. Over time, these repeated choices accumulate, creating a mind that is prepared, adaptable, and unshakable. Discipline also shapes character. It teaches patience, focus, and responsibility. When you do not rely on motivation, you begin to understand the value of delayed gratification. You learn to make decisions that are not based on fleeting feelings, but on principles, strategy, and long-term vision. A disciplined mind becomes less reactive and more intentional. It learns that real success is not achieved in spurts of energy or inspiration, but in steady, persistent action. One of the most profound benefits of discipline is that it reduces the need for motivation altogether. When you train your mind to act consistently, habits take over. You do not need to feel like it because action becomes automatic. You do not need external rewards because your internal standards guide you. You do not rely on temporary enthusiasm because discipline has created reliability. This is how people achieve extraordinary results, not by waiting for the perfect moment, not by chasing motivation, but by showing up daily, consistently, and deliberately, regardless of circumstance. Discipline also strengthens mental resilience because it teaches the mind to handle discomfort. Motivation often comes when conditions are favorable, but life is rarely favorable. Challenges arise. Obstacles appear, setbacks happen. Without discipline, the mind crumbles under pressure. With discipline, the mind adapts, persists, and overcomes. The more you practice discipline, the more you train your mind to endure when conditions are difficult, to perform when energy is low, and to act when circumstances are unfavorable. It is important to understand that discipline is not about perfection or rigidity. It is not about punishing yourself or suppressing emotion. It is about training the mind to act intentionally, to prioritize effort over desire, to choose long-term benefit over short-term comfort. Discipline allows you to tolerate the natural fluctuations of motivation without letting them dictate your behavior. In doing so, it builds a foundation for mental toughness that motivation alone can never provide. The process of building discipline requires commitment. It requires starting small, choosing consistency over intensity, and understanding that progress is measured over time. It means doing the work even when it is inconvenient, even when no one is watching, and even when the immediate reward is absent. Every action you take despite lack of motivation is an investment in your mental strength. Each act compounds. building a mind that does not need motivation to continue, that does not collapse under pressure, and that persists toward long-term goals no matter the obstacles. Ultimately, motivation is a spark. Discipline is the flame that keeps it alive. Motivation can inspire, excite, and energize, but it is fragile, fleeting, and unreliable. Discipline endures. It teaches the mind to act when feelings are inconsistent, when circumstances are difficult, and when the world does not cooperate. A disciplined mind is prepared for the inevitable challenges of life because it has learned to persist without needing external inspiration. Discipline trains the mind to function independently of motivation. It creates a foundation of consistency, resilience, and character. It allows you to continue when enthusiasm fades, to persist when challenges arise, and to achieve what others abandon when they are no longer inspired. The true strength of the mind is revealed not in moments of excitement, but in the quiet, steady practice of discipline when motivation has disappeared. By choosing discipline over dependence on motivation, you build a mind capable of endurance, capable of growth, and capable of achieving greatness regardless of circumstance. You train the mind to act, to persist, to overcome, and to thrive even when motivation is absent. That is the essence of mental strength, and that is why discipline is not optional, it is essential. Pain is one of the most misunderstood experiences in life. Many people spend their lives running from it, avoiding it, or trying to numb it. We are taught to believe that pain is something to be eliminated, something to be feared, something to signal failure. But the truth is far more complicated and far more liberating. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is a signal, a teacher, a necessary companion on the path to growth. The real enemy is unpreparedness. Pain only breaks those who have never trained their minds to endure it, those who have never built resilience, those who have never anticipated the challenges life inevitably brings. Pain is unavoidable. It comes to every human being in one form or another. Physical pain, emotional pain, disappointment, loss, rejection, failure. These are not anomalies, they are constants. What differs from person to person is how we respond. Pain in itself does not destroy us. It does not define us. It exposes the strength or weakness we have cultivated long before the moment arrived. Those who are unprepared see pain as a catastrophe, something that shatters their world. Those who are prepared see it as a test, something that measures how much of their foundation is real, and something that provides an opportunity to grow stronger. Unpreparedness is the silent killer. It hides in comfort, it thrives in procrastination, it masquerades as safety. It tells us that we are ready for life without actually training us for it. When the inevitable pain arrives, and it always does, the unprepared mind collapses because it has never learned how to cope with adversity. It has never developed the tools, the habits, or the discipline to endure difficulty. Pain itself is harsh, but unpreparedness amplifies it. It transforms a challenge into a crisis, a setback into a disaster, and a lesson into trauma. Preparation is not about avoiding pain. Preparation is about creating strength, resilience, and skill so that when pain arrives, it does not overwhelm. It is about building a mind that can tolerate suffering without surrendering, that can face hardship without fleeing, that can persist when everything within and around you is asking you to quit. Pain will always arrive, but a prepared mind meets it with calm, clarity, and courage. That is the difference between those who are broken by life and those who are strengthened by it. Pain teaches, but only if we are ready to learn. The unprepared mind sees pain as meaningless, unfair, or unjust. It reacts emotionally rather than strategically. It panics rather than adapts. But the prepared mind has already been tested in smaller, quieter ways. It has learned through discipline, through struggle, through effort, through challenge that discomfort is not fatal. It has learned that setbacks are temporary, that mistakes are instructive, and that endurance is cultivated through repeated exposure. Pain is not an accident. It is a natural signal that something in our environment or within ourselves requires attention. When we are prepared, we listen, we respond, and we grow. Life is designed to test us. It is not designed to give us warnings. Pain arrives without permission. It comes in moments of vulnerability, in the middle of routine days, in situations we never anticipated. Waiting for pain to appear before learning how to handle it is a recipe for suffering. Those who wait are always behind, reacting rather than acting. Those who prepare in advance cultivate resilience, strength, and adaptability that allow them to navigate difficulty with grace. Pain, then, is a mirror. It reflects what we have built inside ourselves and reveals what we have neglected to develop. Unpreparedness often masquerades as avoidance. We convince ourselves that if we ignore difficulty, it will go away. We delay hard conversations. We postpone growth, we avoid discomfort, and we distract ourselves with business or pleasure. Each act of avoidance weakens the mind because the mind learns only through challenge. Just as a muscle cannot grow without resistance, the mind cannot strengthen without confronting difficulty. Pain, when it finally arrives, meets an untrained mind that has been living in avoidance, and the result is collapse, confusion, or despair. Pain also tests character. It asks, quietly, persistently, and without malice, whether we have developed patience, resilience, integrity, and discipline. Unpreparedness means that when pain appears, character is unproven. Decisions are clouded by fear. Values are compromised by immediate discomfort. Potential is wasted because the mind has not been trained to endure the inevitable trials of life. Those who are prepared, however, use pain as a measure of their development. They use it to clarify priorities, to reinforce principles, and to accelerate growth. Pain becomes a tool, not a threat. Preparation requires intentionality. It requires practice, repetition, and exposure to smaller forms of difficulty before the large ones arrive. It requires confronting challenges even when they are inconvenient or uncomfortable. It requires building habits of discipline, patience, and reflection. These are not glamorous or exciting, but they are essential. They are what create a mind that can face pain without being broken. They are what allows suffering to teach rather than destroy. We often misunderstand resilience. We think resilience is innate, a trait given to a few lucky individuals. But resilience is a skill, and like any skill, it must be developed. Pain alone does not create resilience. Experience alone does not either. Resilience is forged when we intentionally expose ourselves to challenge, learn to endure discomfort, and cultivate mental and emotional strength. When pain arrives, a prepared mind does not resist reality. It engages with it, adapts to it, and emerges stronger on the other side. The prepared mind understands that pain is temporary and that endurance is permanent. It does not seek to eliminate difficulty, but to meet it with readiness. Unpreparedness magnifies suffering because it sees pain as permanent, overwhelming, and meaningless. Preparation shrinks suffering because it teaches the mind that it has already endured, that it has already developed tools, and that it is capable of navigating even the most challenging circumstances. Pain also provides clarity. It strips away illusion, distraction, and complacency. But only those who are prepared can use that clarity effectively. The unprepared mind is disoriented by pain. It loses direction. It panics. It reacts impulsively. But the prepared mind uses pain as a guide, a signal, a teacher that informs decisions, strengthens resolve, and inspires action. Pain is a spotlight, not a weapon. Unpreparedness is what allows the spotlight to feel like a hammer. Finally, pain teaches gratitude, perspective, and growth. But these lessons are wasted if the mind is untrained. Only through preparation can pain become an instrument for transformation rather than a source of defeat. Mental toughness is built not by avoiding pain, but by anticipating it, enduring it, learning from it, and using it to become stronger. Unpreparedness is the true danger because it leaves the mind vulnerable, fragile, and reactive. Pain simply reveals what's already been built or neglected. In the end, the message is simple but powerful: do not fear pain. Pain is inevitable, universal, and informative. Fear the absence of preparation. Fear the mind that has not been trained, the habits that have not been established, and the resilience that has not been cultivated. Pain is temporary. Unpreparedness can be permanent. By building strength, discipline, and endurance before adversity arrives, we ensure that pain is no longer a threat, but a teacher, a guide, and a test that we are ready to pass. Endurance is often seen as a matter of willpower, a test of determination, or the ability to push through discomfort until the goal is reached. While those things play a role, they are not the true foundation of endurance. Endurance is not something you summon in the moment. It is something you embody long before the challenge arrives. The secret to enduring hardship, pressure, or prolonged effort lies not in strategy, willpower, or circumstance. It lies in identity. Who you believe yourself to be, the story you tell yourself about your own character, determines how far you can go, how much you can withstand, and how consistently you can rise in the face of difficulty. Identity shapes behavior. The decisions you make, the habits you cultivate, the effort you sustain, all of these are reflections of the person you believe yourself to be. When you define yourself as someone resilient, disciplined, and capable, endurance becomes natural. You do not have to force yourself to keep going because persistence is an expression of who you are. Conversely, if your identity is rooted in convenience, comfort, or avoidance, no amount of motivation or planning can sustain you when difficulty arises. You will crumble not because the challenge is too great, but because the foundation of your identity is too weak. The mind constantly asks questions about what it is capable of, but it does so through the lens of identity. When faced with a challenge, it does not merely calculate effort versus reward. It measures the challenge against the standard of who you believe you are. If you see yourself as strong, capable, and committed, the mind interprets difficulty as manageable. If you see yourself as fragile, unworthy, or unprepared, the same challenge becomes overwhelming. Endurance is not about resisting discomfort. It is about being the kind of person who naturally persists through discomfort. Every action you take reinforces identity. The small choices you make daily, whether to stay disciplined, to follow through on commitments, to act with integrity, compound into a sense of self. Over time, this sense of self becomes automatic. You do not need to summon extraordinary effort because endurance has been woven into your identity. The person you have trained yourself to be acts in accordance with that identity, even when motivation fades, when fatigue sets in, or when the external world is hostile. Identity also defines the boundaries of possibility. Many people give up not because the task is impossible, but because it feels incompatible with who they believe themselves to be. The strongest individuals do not rely on bursts of willpower to overcome limitation. They rely on a deeply internalized standard of self. They endure because failure or surrender is inconsistent with their identity. When identity and values are aligned, endurance is effortless, not a struggle. Building endurance without first building identity is like trying to construct a skyscraper on sand. Temporary effort may achieve small results, but when pressure increases, the structure collapses. True endurance is rooted in a stable, resilient identity that has been cultivated deliberately over time. It requires reflection, self-awareness, and a commitment to embody the qualities you want to see in yourself. You cannot endure long-term challenges if your identity is undefined, contradictory, or weak. Identity is formed through consistent action. It is not declared or imagined, it is proven. You cannot tell yourself you are disciplined or resilient without demonstrating it repeatedly in daily life. Each act of courage, each moment of consistency, each choice to persist despite discomfort reinforces who you are. Conversely, each moment of compromise, each act of avoidance, each surrender to convenience erodes identity. Endurance is therefore not an abstract trait. It is the cumulative result of actions aligned with a clear sense of self. Challenges often reveal the gaps between who we think we are and who we actually are. When pressure hits, identity is tested. Someone who believes they are capable but has not practiced resilience may falter. Someone who identifies as strong, disciplined, and committed may thrive, not because the situation is easier, but because their identity carries them through. Endurance is less about the intensity of effort in the moment and more about the preparation of character in the quiet hours before adversity arrives. Identity also governs how we interpret setbacks and failure. A person whose identity is tied to perseverance sees failure as a temporary obstacle, an opportunity to learn, or a challenge to overcome. A person whose identity is fragile or externally validated interprets failure as proof of inadequacy, a signal to quit, or a reason to retreat. Endurance is not merely physical or mental stamina, it is the ability to maintain consistency, effort, and composure over time. And that ability depends entirely on how the mind interprets and reacts to challenges through the lens of identity. The story you tell yourself matters. Your internal narrative defines your sense of possibility, your tolerance for discomfort, and your commitment to persist. Identity is the voice in your mind that answers the question, who am I in this situation? The louder and more confident that voice, the further you can go, the longer you can endure, and the more effectively you can respond to adversity. When identity is weak or contradictory, the mind is flooded with doubt, indecision, and distraction, which erodes endurance before the external challenge even begins. Identity also provides intrinsic motivation. Most people try to endure based on rewards, recognition, or fear of consequences, but external motivators are temporary and fragile. Endurance fueled by external factors fades when conditions change or rewards disappear. Identity-driven endurance, however, is internal and self-sustaining. You endure because it is who you are. You persist because quitting would be inconsistent with the person you have chosen to become. This kind of endurance is far more reliable, far more consistent, and far more powerful than anything motivation alone can achieve. To cultivate endurance through identity, one must be deliberate in defining the qualities they want to embody. Courage, resilience, discipline, patience, focus, and integrity are not abstract virtues. They are behavioral standards that must be enacted daily. The mind internalizes identity not through wishful thinking, but through repeated alignment of actions with values. Every choice, no matter how small, signals to the mind, this is who I am. Over time, these signals accumulate into a robust sense of self capable of sustaining long-term effort and facing adversity without faltering. Endurance also requires self-awareness and reflection. Understanding the current state of your identity allows you to identify weaknesses, inconsistencies, or gaps that might undermine your ability to persist. Reflection is the mechanism by which you course correct, reinforce strengths, and ensure that your actions continue to align with the person you want to become. Identity without awareness can become rigid or misplaced, but identity cultivated with insight produces adaptability, clarity, and unwavering endurance. Ultimately, endurance is not about resisting fatigue or ignoring discomfort. It is about embodying a self that naturally persists through difficulty. Identity determines how you respond to challenge, how you interpret failure, and how you sustain effort over time. The person you have trained yourself to be defines the limits of what you can endure. Those who understand this principle recognize that mental toughness is not built in the heat of crisis, but in the quiet cultivation of identity before the storm arrives. By prioritizing identity over temporary motivation, by aligning actions with values, and by committing to a consistent practice of self-definition, endurance becomes not only possible, but inevitable. Challenges, setbacks, and prolonged effort are no longer threats, but opportunities to express who you are. Identity does not merely influence endurance, it dictates it. The stronger, clearer, and more aligned your identity, the further, longer, and more effectively you can endure. The mind that has been deliberately shaped and trained in advance carries you through adversity with confidence, resilience, and unwavering resolve. Endurance is the natural expression of identity. It is not something you will conjure in the moment of need. It is something you live, act, and embody long before the need arises. Who you are inside determines how far you can go outside. And the only way to achieve true endurance is to build it through deliberate, consistent, and intentional cultivation of identity in every thought, every choice, and every action. The mind is not built in grand gestures. It is not forged in rare moments of extreme pressure or sudden revelation. It is shaped quietly, almost imperceptibly, through the accumulation of small daily choices. These choices, repeated over time, compound into habits, and habits compound into character. The unbreakable mind is not something that appears overnight or during a moment of crisis. It is the result of intentional decisions made consistently, often when no one is watching, when the world is silent, and when the easier path is tempting but rejected. Every day you face countless choices. Some seem insignificant: waking up on time, making your bed, choosing to exercise, focusing on a single task rather than scrolling endlessly. speaking with honesty, acting with patience. Each of these moments carries weight, not in isolation, but in their accumulation. These are the bricks from which mental resilience is constructed. The choices you make in these small, seemingly trivial moments determine how you will respond when life presents challenges far greater than anything you face on an ordinary day. Consistency is the hidden force behind unbreakable minds. Motivation is unreliable, inspiration is fleeting. But small daily choices performed habitually do not require constant excitement. They do not rely on external validation or extraordinary circumstances. They are the practice through which the mind learns to act regardless of emotion, regardless of difficulty, regardless of temporary discomfort. Every choice, no matter how minor, is a rehearsal for the inevitable trials of life. The stronger the daily practice, the stronger the mind becomes when the storm arrives. Habits are not formed by chance. They are formed by repetition, by the conscious decision to act in alignment with your values, even when doing so is inconvenient. Choosing integrity over convenience, effort over ease, discipline over distraction, these choices reinforce the neural pathways that define how you act under pressure. When difficulty arises, the mind does not invent new skills on the spot. It relies on what has already been practiced. Small choices build those pathways, ensuring that when life tests you, the response is automatic, reliable, and unshakable. Patience is another product of small daily choices. Every moment you resist the urge for immediate gratification, every decision to delay reward in favor of long-term gain strengthens mental endurance. Life constantly offers shortcuts, distractions, and temptations to abandon discipline. Each time you choose to stay committed, to persist through discomfort, to focus on effort rather than outcome, you train your mind to tolerate stress, delay gratification, and act purposefully. Over time, patience becomes natural, and with patience comes resilience, the ability to sustain effort without collapsing under pressure. Small daily choices also shape perception and mindset. How you respond to setbacks, criticism, or frustration begins in the everyday decisions to control your reactions. Do you respond with anger or with calm, with blame or with accountability, with despair or with curiosity? These micro decisions, repeated thousands of times, cultivate a mind that does not crumble when confronted with adversity. They teach the mind that control is internal, that stability is a product of discipline, and that perspective is chosen rather than imposed by circumstance. The unbreakable mind is a byproduct of deliberate practice over time. It is not created by heroic acts or extraordinary talent. It is sculpted through the mundane, the repetitive, and the intentional. Choosing to read instead of mindlessly scrolling, choosing to reflect instead of reacting impulsively, choosing to take responsibility instead of blaming others. These choices accumulate. They are not noticed in the moment, but their power becomes evident when life demands more than temporary effort, when the pressure is relentless, when challenges seem insurmountable. Every choice also carries a lesson in accountability. When you make small decisions consciously, you reinforce the understanding that your life is shaped by your actions, not by circumstance, luck, or the opinions of others. This recognition is crucial for mental toughness. The unbreakable mind does not see life as a series of random events to be endured. It sees life as a set of responses to be managed, each guided by intention, discipline, and personal responsibility. Small choices teach this lesson gradually, but irrevocably. Consistency in small choices also fosters confidence. Confidence is not the product of untested ability or idle hope. It is the result of repeated practice and proven competence. Every day you follow through on your commitments, no matter how minor, you reinforce the belief in your own reliability. You prove to yourself that you can act, that you can endure, that you can persist. This internal proof builds a foundation of trust in yourself, which becomes essential when facing larger challenges. When pressure comes, you do not crumble because you have already proven to yourself that you can handle difficulty, even in the small things. Small daily choices also cultivate self-awareness. Each choice is an opportunity to examine your tendencies, to recognize weakness, and to practice improvement. Do you give in to distraction or maintain focus? Do you speak impulsively or choose restraint? Do you react emotionally or respond thoughtfully? These repeated decisions teach the mind how it works, how it responds to stress, and how it can be guided towards stronger, more resilient patterns of thought and behavior. Self-awareness is the foundation of adaptation, and adaptation is essential for an unbreakable mind. The power of small, daily choices becomes most visible when challenges are severe. Those who have practiced discipline, patience, reflection, and integrity in everyday life respond to crisis with composure, clarity, and effectiveness. Those who have neglected the small choices, who have allowed habits to form through convenience or avoidance, are overwhelmed by circumstances they could have handled. The mind responds according to the training it has received. In the quiet moments, the foundation of resilience is built. In the storm, it is revealed. Small daily choices also reinforce long-term vision. Every time you choose action over inertia, learning over ignorance, courage over avoidance, you are aligning with your future self. Mental toughness is not a product of one-time heroics. It is the outcome of accumulated effort, repeated decisions, and consistent alignment with purpose. Each choice is a vote for the person you want to become. The unbreakable mind is the aggregate of those votes, cast consistently over days, months, and years. It is also essential to recognize that small choices require conscious effort. They are not automatic because they are often contrary to instinct. The mind seeks comfort, ease, and avoidance. Each decision to act differently, to pursue growth over convenience, requires awareness, attention, and intentionality. That tension is precisely what strengthens the mind. The act of choosing, especially when it is difficult, is training. Repetition of that training creates habits, and habits create identity. Identity, in turn, produces endurance, resilience, and unbreakable strength. Ultimately, the unbreakable mind is not made in moments of crisis, pressure, or extraordinary challenge. It is formed in the daily practice of deliberate, conscious choices. It is the outcome of choosing discipline over convenience, action over procrastination, patience over impatience, reflection over reaction, and responsibility over blame. These choices compound invisibly, quietly, yet powerfully, shaping a mind that is ready, resilient, and unshakable when life inevitably demands more than you imagined. The essence of building an unbreakable mind lies in recognizing the profound impact of small, everyday decisions. They are the invisible architects of character, the quiet teachers of resilience, and the reliable builders of mental strength. By committing to consistent, intentional action in the small moments, you create a mind capable of enduring adversity, thriving under pressure, and persisting toward long-term goals regardless of circumstance. Small daily choices are not minor, they are monumental. They are the foundation on which unbreakable minds are constructed. Pressure is not selective. It does not ask for permission, it does not wait for preparation, and it does not care whether you feel ready. It arrives with relentless insistence, often when circumstances are least favorable, when resources are limited, and when the margin for error is non-existent. Everyone experiences pressure, but how we respond to it is entirely dependent on who we have trained ourselves to become long before the moment arrives. Pressure does not create resilience, it reveals it. It exposes the depth of preparation, the strength of character, and the integrity of identity that have been cultivated over time. Many people live under the illusion that pressure can be overcome in the moment. They assume that courage, discipline, or endurance are qualities to be summoned on demand, like a switch to be flipped when the situation becomes urgent. The reality is far different. The person you are under pressure is the person you have been in the quiet moments when no one was watching, when effort was optional, and when choices were made that no one else noticed. Pressure does not invent new abilities, it amplifies what already exists. Pressure is a mirror. It reflects who you truly are. When stakes are high, deadlines are tight, emotions are raw, or circumstances are overwhelming, the habits, values, and mindset you have developed are tested. The training you have undertaken, discipline, patience, preparation, resilience is revealed, and shortcuts, avoidance, or superficial effort are exposed. There is no hiding under pressure, no pretending, and no relying on external validation. Pressure strips away illusions, leaving only what has been internalized through repeated practice. The mind is remarkably honest under pressure. When confronted with difficulty, it defaults to the patterns it has learned. If you have trained yourself to respond with focus, clarity, and perseverance, the mind acts accordingly. If you have trained yourself to avoid discomfort, procrastinate, or seek validation, the mind will react with panic, indecision, and frustration. Pressure does not create these responses. It reveals the structure of your mental training. The habits you form in ordinary circumstances determine your behavior in extraordinary ones. Preparation, therefore, is essential. Every moment you have spent cultivating patience, discipline, endurance, and self-awareness contributes to how you will perform under pressure. Long before the crisis arrives, the choices you make shape the mental architecture that will sustain you. Small daily actions, waking up early, completing tasks despite fatigue, facing uncomfortable truths, holding yourself accountable, build neural pathways that determine responses to high-stakes situations. These pathways are invisible until they are tested. Pressure does not grant strength, it exposes the strength that has already been built. Pressure also teaches humility and perspective. It forces you to confront limitations, recognize weaknesses, and accept the reality of circumstances. The unprepared mind is shattered by this confrontation, mistaking the presence of difficulty for personal failure. The prepared mind, however, sees pressure as feedback, as information about what needs reinforcement, adaptation, or focus. It understands that the stress of the moment is temporary, but the habits and character built over time are enduring. Pressure is a test, not an indictment. Stressful circumstances often magnify flaws. Every gap in preparation, every neglected skill, every compromise in character becomes visible under pressure. If patience has not been practiced, frustration escalates. If discipline has not been cultivated, procrastination dominates. If self-confidence has not been nurtured, doubt paralyzes. Pressure does not discriminate. It simply accelerates the outcomes of the patterns that have already been established. Those who have trained themselves deliberately respond with precision and resilience. Those who have not falter under the weight of exposure. Pressure is also the ultimate teacher of focus. Under high stakes, distraction is costly. The mind that has been trained through repetition, reflection, and deliberate action knows how to filter noise, prioritize what matters, and respond strategically. Habits formed in low-pressure environments, such as consistent effort, attentiveness, and emotional regulation, become automatic under stress. The trained mind does not need to struggle to act. It acts instinctively in alignment with its preparation. Every challenge, every deadline, every moment of intense pressure is an opportunity to reveal the depth of your internal training. It is also a chance to reinforce it. Each response under pressure that strengthens the mind further or exposes gaps to be addressed. This is why deliberate practice, self-discipline, and mental conditioning are non-negotiable. They are not optional because they are the only way to ensure that when the storm comes, you are capable, composed, and effective. Pressure does not merely reveal skill, it reveals character. Integrity, courage, patience, and accountability are visible only under strain. When corners could be cut, when shortcuts are tempting, when fear urges surrender, character is tested. The mind trained in these qualities does not hesitate. It acts decisively, aligned with long-held principles. The untrained mind falters, rationalizes, or retreats. Pressure does not create virtue. It exposes the consistency of the virtue you have cultivated. The timing of pressure is unpredictable, which is why preparation is not a response, it is a lifestyle. You cannot anticipate when it will arrive, but you can control the person you become in the meantime. The small decisions made in ordinary circumstances, maintaining discipline when tired, speaking truth when convenient, silence is easier. Embracing discomfort when avoidance would be simpler. Define the response when extraordinary pressure inevitably appears. Pressure reveals the sum of all these prior choices, distilled into action in the critical moment. Pressure also reveals resilience in ways comfort never could. The mind that has been trained to endure minor discomfort, to practice patience, and to embrace challenge is able to sustain effort over prolonged periods without collapse. The untrained mind interprets pressure as intolerable, allowing fear, doubt, or frustration to dominate. Endurance is not created by the pressure itself, it is revealed by it through the patterns that have been cultivated in preparation. Moreover, pressure is a teacher of adaptability. Life rarely conforms to our plans, expectations, or convenience. The ability to respond effectively under pressure comes from repeated practice in adjusting, improvising, and maintaining composure under smaller stresses. Each encounter with difficulty, each choice to persist, adapt, and learn prepares the mind to handle larger, more unpredictable pressure. When the stakes are highest, the mind trained in adaptability does not panic, it navigates with clarity and purpose. Pressure also separates the superficial from the substantial. Motivation, enthusiasm, and short excitement may carry someone only so far. But the trained mind, forged through deliberate effort, consistency, and preparation, sustains itself beyond the limitations of external factors. Pressure reveals who can endure because it strips away the illusions of readiness, leaving only the truth of preparation, habit, and character. In essence, pressure is a revelation, not an invention. It does not grant abilities, create courage, or force resilience. It exposes the depth of preparation, the alignment of values, and the consistency of habits that have been built over time. The person you become under pressure is the reflection of who you have trained yourself to be long before the moment of challenge arrives. Each choice, each action, each moment of deliberate effort compounds invisibly until it manifests under stress. To perform effectively under pressure, one must cultivate a lifestyle of preparation, integrity, and consistent practice. Training the mind in quiet, ordinary circumstances ensures that when extraordinary circumstances arrive, the response is automatic, reliable, and unshakable. Pressure does not create the unbreakable mind, it reveals it, exposing the sum of all prior effort, the depth of internalized discipline, and the consistency of character that determines how one endures, adapts, and ultimately prevails. Pressure, then, is not the enemy. It is a mirror, reflecting both strengths and weaknesses. It is a test revealing whether the training you have invested in yourself is sufficient. It is a crucible transforming preparation into demonstrated capability. The person you are under pressure is not a matter of chance or circumstance. It is the product of deliberate choices, daily habits, and consistent preparation. The greater the pressure, the more precise the revelation. And when the mind has been trained thoughtfully, intentionally, and persistently, pressure exposes not weakness, but the unbreakable strength of who you have become.